So next, we're going to see two slides that get us started off with the basics of forensics. Again, the basic goals that every forensic anthropologist should have, and again, on a very simple level. First of these is the number of individuals present, which is also known as the minimum number of individuals, or MNI for short. Minimum number of individuals counts particular elements that are repetitive and gives us an idea of how many individuals are possibly in a collection of bones we're looking at. As an example, in your textbook, you'll see it at some of the sites like Hadar or Laoli that they say that there's 45 to 60 individuals out of 6,000 specimens. That's based essentially on skulls and or lower jaw bones, but they're counting those as singular elements representing an individual. The next slide gives you an idea of how many individuals you might have in a population and the determining factors for some of that. This helps these forensic anthropologists to sort things out on a very basic level and then to continue on from there for more intensive analytic techniques. So first off, how many, going with the number of individuals, how many individuals do we have in this collection of bones? Now, in some cases, it's very obvious it's a single individual. In other cases, say, for example, a serial killer that likes to put his victims in barrels of acid, there will be remains, and or individuals who bury their victims under their floorboards, etc., etc. You might need to sort things out. Also, in mass graves, so any atrocities, any civil liberties atrocities that occur, these are the sorts of things that need to be identified and sorted out. The way in which that occurs is through repetitive sides or repetitive elements. Again, if you have two or more skulls or mandibles in a collection, you know that you've got more than one individual. If you have two left femora, as an example, two upper thigh, two upper leg bones, then you've got two individuals or a very bad dancer. Also, you want to look at the size of the materials, the size of the elements. Bones that are supposed to be the same, matching pairs, but yet are shorter or longer or thicker or more narrow, those are going to be evidence that you've got more than one individual, even though, for example, we use the femur again, there may be a right and a left. If one is substantially shorter and or the bone is thicker or thinner, then chances are that you've got two people. The same thing with the shape in that sense, thicker or thinner, but also using the femur as an example, and I'll show this in a bit as well on a visual so you can see. The head of the femur and the neck of the femur may come out at the same angle, will come out at the same angle with individuals with a very little variation. But if there's a greater amount of variation, even though they're not matching elements, that is same side elements, you may have two different individuals. Then of course things like colorization and other or other factors that are involved in there. When I say colorization, of course, I mean individuals who may have more of a colorization from elements in the ground. So in the textbook it talks a little bit about this, but things like manganese or fluorine will colorize a bone. And if it's in the same location, under the same conditions, you might see some bones are darker, some bones are lighter. The lighter bones, of course, are newer additions compared to the older. That has a little bit of fudge factor in there that you need to be aware of, but that's something more for our archaeology class than this class. Following that, you want to separate the material out into what is obviously biologically male or female. This can be done through a number of different techniques. You're going to learn a few of these techniques in later videos. But basically looking at the biological sex, you can sort out male or female. If you've got the remains of two individuals, one is a male and one is a female, you've come closer to a good identification of who the individual might be. On the other hand, if you've got multiples of all with records, if there are any, you may be able to sort it out to the number of males and females. But just for demographic purposes, just to look at how many males and females might be in a burial, because in some cases you'll have a cemetery, as an example, that might not be a civil rights violation, may just be a cemetery over time. where the bones were kind of clumped together. The next thing you want to look at is the age at the time of death. People do not continue aging once they're dead. And there are a series of tables that we can look at for that. Won't go into any detail here because we'll go through these when we go through our separate handouts and the videos following. The next is the stature of the individual. Stature of the individual, again, there are different techniques for measuring and approximating the stature of individuals. All of these are ranges, by the way. The age at time of death and stature are ranges. No forensic anthropologist will tell you that the individual they found was 5'10" and 60 years old. If they can tell you that, they found their driver's license with the body. So stature at time of death reconstruction will give you a range, generally within a few inches of each of top to bottom, so maximum and minimum. Then finally, race or ethnicity. In this case, or what I like to say, population, a little better descriptor for that. In this sense, if you're dealing with law enforcement agents, they really want to know just one of three separate populations. They want to know African, European, or Asian, because that's how they describe their persons of interest. We'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the videos on that as I go through. And then finally, just off the side, and sort of related to how many as well, is the general sort of look of the bones themselves, the cluster of bones. You're looking for damage either through trauma or health-related issues. Of course, in some cases, in forensic issues, we want to know cause of death. In some cases, it's fairly apparent. Bone shattered by say, bullet or bullet fragments, bullets still embedded in, or knife wounds, etc., etc. Blunt force trauma, of course, on the skull, very obvious. Bullet hole through the skull, very obvious. Health-related issues, a little more dicey in this sense. Again, above our level here for an introductory course, but diseases such as cancer, syphilis, etc., will show on the bones. They're actually basically what it looks like is they're actually eating away at the bone. Unfortunately, both cancer and syphilis have the same sort of look on the bones, so you have to be, again, it's a more advanced sort of analysis. You have to be aware of that.